Good morning. I'd like to call to order the MWPA Executive Committee meeting of August 3rd, 2023. Noting that we have one member remote on Zoom this morning, one board member, Rachel Kirsch. Could we do a roll call, please?
Certainly, sir. Director Goins,
Here.
Director Hilliard. Here. Director Kurtz,
Here.
Director McMillan,
Here.
and President Rodoni.
Present. Thank you. Any agenda adjustments? Seeing no hands or suggestions, we'll move on to open time, item 4. Public is welcome to address the executive committee at this time on matters not on the agenda that are within the jurisdiction of this committee. Be advised that pursuant to the government code, the committee is not permitted to discuss or takes action on any matter not on the agenda. Comments may be no longer than 3 minutes and should be respectful to the community. Please remember to silence your phone and devices, put them on mute when not reporting out. Open time, please. Martina.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on items currently not on the agenda, please raise your hand in the reactions. And for those joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And sir, there are no hands for public comment.
Thank you very much. Item 5 is our executive officer report. Mark.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back from a month of being off. It was a nice not to have to work on so many different agendas for the month of July. But it also meant that we could put some more effort towards other things behind the scenes. So staff was still very busy during the month of July. So I'll give you an update on quite a bit of it, but I won't be giving it to you all, and we'll follow up with a comprehensive report at the board meeting, but I just didn't want to double up on it. Quick fire season update. As we thought, we're a little bit delayed in the start of fire season, thankfully delayed, not just here in Marin, but elsewhere in California. But we are seeing indications of large fire development, especially down in the Southland, which is completely what we should expect. I looked at the fuel moistures for the 100-hour and 1,000-hour just a few minutes ago, and they are trending at historical averages right now. However, a week ago or a week or two ago, they were actually down to almost historic lows. And that just kind of is what we've been talking about, that the heavier fuels don't recover that quickly from droughts. And there was a recent article that, and it was Scott Stevens, who's a very reputable meteorologist or professor in fire weather. I was kind of, maybe it's the way they quoted him, but he was talking about decreased activity in fire seasons following a wet winter. But what he didn't differentiate, or what the article didn't differentiate, there's a difference between a wet winter after normal winters compared to a wet winter after a drought year. And I think that was an important differentiation that should have been brought out in that article, because we do have research that shows that we have catastrophic fires following drought busting winters. They just happen later. So we are trending right now we are probably about a month behind in our normal fuel moistures, but we are starting to see a pickup in fire activity. We had the fortune of being invited to speak at Assemblymember Connolly's Select Committee on Wildfire Prevention. I felt the hearing went very well. The first presenter was CAL FIRE, Frank Bigelow, who was someone who visited us when we hosted our tour of the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break. We had a representative from the California Department of Insurance. Then I spoke, and then Sashi Saparatnam was able to speak after me. And then we had a member from the timber industry to share their perspective. And it felt like there was a really good flow, that I felt like CAL FIRE and California Department of Insurance completely teed up the presentation for the MWPA. So it went really well. And then Sashi's comments, I thought were well stated. And she basically had 2 main points that she made. No matter how much the state and the federal agencies are doing to help provide funding, It really takes local action to have good wildfire prevention. So she was really promoting the idea that these projects, these efforts really need to start locally and then use the tools and resources being made available by the state and federal agencies. And then her second point, spot on, it takes collaboration at the local level to make this all happen. As a follow-up with this meeting or the hearing, myself, Matt Sampson from Marin Water and Dave Winokur had a meeting with the Assembly member yesterday to talk about more of our efforts and some ideas that we can give him to help replicate this type of work throughout the state. And we're going to be scheduling a follow-up meeting. We had the opportunity through Director McMillan's connection at a recent meeting with Congressman Huffman. We met with him earlier this week, Monday, I believe it was, and primarily to talk about what his office can do to support our grant efforts at the federal level. They're right behind us. They're giving us the support that we need, but he said, well, is there anything else you want to talk about? And so we did talk about the insurance challenges that we have in California, acknowledging that it really is a state issue to solve. He's at federal government, but we did ask if he had any ideas, any models from other states, or if he had any particular connections that he may be able to help facilitate for us. And then also, you know, one of my main goals was just to get his awareness of the MWPA a little bit higher, for us to get a little bit higher on his radar. And I think we succeeded in that. And as we mentioned to Congressman, we feel that insurance right now is probably the number one concern that the members of the public have. And that's why we wrote the Marin Voice. I've received a lot of positive feedback on that Marin Voice, and we wanted to highlight the efforts that we are doing to help our residents ensure that they're going to maintain their coverage. And so that's just going to be that'll probably be one of our strongest focuses here for the next year or two, besides the work we're getting done, but is in the insurance environment. August 1st was the kickoff of the Greater Nevada Shaded Fuel Break. You see a picture right there of yesterday's training. All of the crews that will be working on the Greater Nevada Shaded Fuel Break went through training for the environmental practices that we like them to follow in our prescription. Great article in the IJ today. Front page, top of the fold, great ink, as I said earlier to someone. And one of these days, they'll get our name right in the paper, which kind of maybe something I'll be bringing back to the board is the idea of branding a slightly different, rather than having Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, which can be a mouthful, and MWPA just doesn't resonate with people, that perhaps we should just go with Marin Wildfire. So just kind of plant that in the back of your mind and think about that as we move forward. Also, in the article, you'll see that we received a $2.6 million grant from CAL FIRE to support that. And we are pushing out a joint press release with County Fire today, because they received a $1.4 million grant as well. So we'll have a press release going out about that grant. And then VMS recruitment went remarkably well. We're still in the process, but we received nearly 40 applications. And of those nearly 40 applications, 30 or 26 met minimum qualifications. They went through a highly qualified review interview, and 11 candidates are moving forward to interviews with Ann and I, so we can select 2 VMS vegetation management specialists out of 11. So and looking at the resumes and the applications, we have some excellent candidates that put in for this. I'm really pleased with that. And I'll close with that staff will be having a retreat on August 22nd with the goal to document and formalize our administrative processes that we have behind the scenes. Number one, so we aren't reinventing the wheel every year. We have something to look back to. Number two, we don't have a single point of failure. We just have to we're such a small organization that we have to make sure that everything is well documented, that if someone were to slip on a wet pavement and be in the hospital for whatever, or I have a heart attack or something, but that we have the documentation, someone can step in and get the work done. So that's what we're working on behind the scenes. And with that, I'll fix that we really aren't August 35th on my PowerPoint. So I'll fix that. But see what happens when you cut and paste. With that, I'll take questions.
Thanks, Mark. So questions of the executive committee? Julie?
Mark, I'm just wondering what the timing is on actually retaining the vegetation management specialists.
We are targeting the interviews to happen through next week and the week following. Then we can go through the tentative offers the following week, go through a background investigation. So, and depending on what any previous employment that the people may have, best case scenario, end of August, likely September.
Thank you.
Great. Other questions? And Rachel, just speak up. I can't see you on my screen here.
Yeah, I'm here. I do. It's sort of a question and a comment. So Mark, on the insurance piece, thank you for helping with that conversation. You're wearing my Central Marin hat as the neighborhood response coordinator for Central Marin. We are hosting an insurance forum, homeowners and insurance. And so it's going to be a panel and Mark's going to actually be participating in that. And so I just wanted to make sure that that's on people's radar as well. That's on October 17th. And it will be at the Corte Madera Community Center at 7 p.m. And so, Mark, appreciate you participating in that panel as well to help get the word out.
Rachel, will that be recorded so we could post it on websites and things?
I'm getting many people asking for that. So it will have a panel with Amy Bach and an attorney, Joel Gumbiner, insurance attorney, an insurance agent, a woman from Santa Rosa who lost her home. And so we're getting a lot of people who are interested. We've also invited Senator McGuire as well as Ricardo Lara. So we haven't gotten confirmation from them yet, but we're hoping. So yes, the question is about it recording. We are definitely getting interest, and I need to set up to, because I'm not sure that facility actually handles recording well. So we might need to bring in somebody else to help with the recording.
Great, thank you. Other questions? Mark? All right, we'll go to the public now for any public comment on the executive officer's report.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the executive officer's report, please raise your hand in the reactions. And for those joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And so, sir, there are no comments from the public.
Thank you. Going to move to item 6, which is the consent calendar, and we'll start with the opportunity for the public to comment on the consent calendar. There's only one item, the minutes of June 1st, 2023 Executive Committee. Martina, any public comment on that item?
If there's anyone wishing to speak on the consent calendar item, please raise your hand in the reaction or press *9 to unmute yourself and *6. *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself if you're joining by phone. And sir, there are no public comments.
Thank you. So any questions or comments from board members? If not, can we have a motion on the consent calendar, please?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you. Okay, it's moved by Millen, second by Hilliard to approve the consent calendar. Can we do a roll call, please?
Director Goins,
Hi.
Director Hilliard,
Aye.
Director Kurtz,
Aye.
Director McMillan,
Aye.
President Rodoni.
Aye. Thank you very much. Item 7 is the discussion item, City of Mill Valley annexation to Southern Marin Fire. Mark Brown will present this, and we have both our attorney here and county counsel here. So thank you for being here.
Yes, so as I mentioned at our June meeting, following the annexation of Mill Valley by the Southern Marin Fire District, we were doing an evaluation of what the appropriate course of action moving forward was. And as you probably remember, as we were going through the creation of the Joint Powers Authority, that basically the two ways of entry, or the two things that you need to have as entry into the MWPA was the taxation authority for fire protection. And so using Novato as an example, the city of Novato does not have the taxing authority for fire protection. Therefore, Novato Fire District is the representative for that area. Then as the language moved forward, at the time, Mill Valley did have taxing and fire protection authority. Therefore, they are a member of the MWPA, also listed as one of the taxing entities in the Measure C ordinance. We envision bringing members on as the language was written for the Joint Powers Authority. There really was not discussed within that language how an agency would exit should there be a merger. So when Megan and I started exploring this, our actually first thought was that Mill Valley would need to back out of the JPA. But as we started researching it and connecting with Steve and Rob as well, we found that the language was silent to departure. And there's case law apparently that says if it's silent, then we really can't manipulate the membership. And both Southern Marin Fire and Mill Valley have asked to maintain the relationship on the board, the operations committee, and at the advisory technical committee in the way that it is. And it's actually somewhat beneficial because, and this is Southern Marin Fire actually asking not to have the opportunity to have a greater weight in their vote, because if the annexation caused Mill Valley to depart, it would increase the percentage of vote that Southern Marin Fire would have. So it doesn't create another larger member, and it could if that would make 3 large member agencies within the MWPA population wise, they really could have a lot of sway within the organization. So Southern Marin stepping back and saying, you know what, we want Mill Valley to continue to have their percentage of the vote actually, I think, helps us in being able to spread that vote out. And so we do have that option to possibly change that, but staff does recommend keeping the voting structures for the board, operations, and the advisory technical committee as is. And then I have Steve and Rob here, who knows a lot more about writing that language than I did, if he wishes to add anything or any opinions about previous opinions on this type of stuff, because I'm not the guy to ask.
Thanks, Mark. Stephen, do you want to make any comment at this point or just wait for questions?
Just to follow up what Mark said, the language was silent to what happens. Okay. The language was silent for what would happen if there was a merger, and that was intentional because we were well aware that of the potential of Mill Valley and Southern Marin joining, and we were also aware that Ross Valley potentially could form their own district, and so we knew that it was a potential, but it was difficult to craft any kind of language when we were trying to bring a group together, a group of 17 now, but potentially 19 disparate groups, and pull this together. And it was really had to be a lot of cooperation. And there was a lot of cooperation. And one of the ways to get to the finish line was to not add this. So when you talk about why is it not in there, it was intentional. And the statutory construction says if it's not in there, it should be assumed it was intentional. And in this case, it definitely was intentional.
Great. Thank you. Questions of Mark or Stephen? Rachel, again, I can't see you on my screen, so if you have any questions, please.
Nope, all good on my side. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So I guess the only question I had, will you be recommending when we renew this that we address this issue, or given the comments you just made, is there still ongoing maybe discussions about mergers?
So it really comes down to the taxing power, and the organization was created because we didn't create an organization and give them a taxing power on their own. We created an organization where each entity retained its own taxing power and puts their power on the ballot for their community. And so I think you'll have to address it going forward, because once the agreement expires and you have to go out to the voters again, it will be a different agency. Mill Valley won't have the ability to tax for fire services anymore. So you will have to address how Mill Valley will most likely have to step aside if you retain the same structure of individual communities taxing, and not creating a structure where you have all taxing power lent to the MWPA.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Just
Julie,
to
go ahead.
follow up on that, timing wise, when would you recommend that we start looking at that issue prior to the renewal of the JPA?
Well, I think that was when we started forming this, the original construction, that was probably the first thing that we arrived upon and guided everything else. So I think it's fundamental. I think it's the first question you have to ask yourself going forward is, where does the taxing power come from? Because without the ability to put a parcel tax on the ballot, you don't have any funding. So if you can't answer that question, it's very difficult to work through any other issue you have.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? We'll go to public comment on this item then. Martina, please.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on item 7A, the City of Mill Valley annexation to Southern Marin Fire District, please raise your hand in the reaction. And for those joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And sir, there are no hands for public comment.
Okay. So I'm looking, there's no formal action, but are you looking for a recommendation to the board?
Just looking for general feedback and discussion, and just so you guys know, it'll come forward at the board meeting as a consent item.
Julie, go ahead.
I would just suggest adding something to the report about resolving this issue well in advance of the renewal. And I guess Megan would be slated to shepherd that resolution through, just so that it doesn't fall through the cracks.
Would it be more appropriate to say, address this issue, because we don't know if we want to resolve it, given other complications we might run into? I don't know if there's a resolution exactly that we can come to, or we may want some more flexibility is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about the timing.
But to your point, I think it makes sense to start those discussions and sort of see which direction the board wants to go in with that taxation issue and who will have the power to put that parcel tax on.
Yeah, great. Catherine?
So my understanding is we're all for this, the way it's being recommended. And when you have an annexation after the fact, the City of Mill Valley residents are still paying into their taxes. That tax is now automatically coming from the City of Mill Valley just for the fire portion to the district, which means that they are a taxation agency. So they should have this privilege right now. So it could happen that if Ross Valley forms and it turns out where it goes through the state and comes back to the larger group, but there's still, the residents are still paying, that's the feature that you have to be concerned about. Am I off base, or is that correct?
Are you talking about the tax factor that's
Right,
transferred?
right.
So the parcel tax wasn't transferred in the merger. There's a tax factor that the tax collector calculates and simply transfers, and that's occurred. So that part is complete, but there is a part of everybody's tax bill. There is a parcel tax, and that parcel tax is on the residents of Mill Valley's tax bill because the City of Mill Valley put it on there. And so if you took any other steps, you would have to answer the legal question of, can that tax remain, or would it have to be renewed? Because the City of Mill Valley put that tax, a parcel tax, on there. And so when you get to the next step, that's what you have to be worried about, is who is going to be putting it on the parcel tax, and it would have to be Southern Marin Fire. But if you come up with a different structure, you might have an agency that can actually put a parcel tax onto an individual property. And so it wouldn't be Southern Marin Fire that would tax a Mill Valley citizen. It would be the agency itself. And so that's where the future decision has to come down to, is how can you solve the issue going forward without knowing who it has the power to tax?
Thank you for the explanation in detail. Appreciate it.
Okay, Julie, go ahead.
I just have a comment. In my mind, the more representation we have on this board, the better. So I would want to try to resolve it with preserving as many seats on the board as possible and as much representation as we can possibly have.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to bring you back to committee for discussion and feedback to staff. It sounds like we're consistent with what's being recommended, and that we're going to be okay with that being recommended to the board at the next meeting. Anyone object to that?
Just
Right.
a thought, Mark, you mentioned that this would be on the consent calendar. I think we may want to have a little more discussion about it so that everyone on the board is aware of this past issue and also what may be confronting us in the future.
Gotcha.
And it probably would be helpful to have Stephen there too, just in case there's additional questions come up about the measure. Thank you. Sorry.
Looks happy.
He's happy. Yeah. Yeah.
I'd be happy to attend.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. All right. Anything else in this item? All right. We're going to go to item 7B then. Use of Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority logo.
Yes, and I'll give a little background on why we're bringing this forward at this time. We've been mentioning for almost the duration of the MWPA that the need for public-private partnerships in order to work through the wildfire paradigm that we're currently in. It's not just going to be public agencies that are solving this. It's going to require partnerships with private entities. And we've had some interesting conversations with some private companies that whether they sell gutter guards or they have the smaller vents that we're looking for, they really want to partner with the MWPA. We even had it offered that they would send their own marketing out with our branding on it and say, hey, you can get an MWPA grant to install our product. And that sounds like a great idea and the type of partnership that we do want to go into. However, we want to have a process to vet these vendors and make sure that they really are the people that we want to partner with. And so we kind of took a pause with those discussions. We wanted to craft a policy of who can use our branding and our logo. And also at the same time, we're going through the process of creating a request for qualifications or a request for proposals of these type of contractors that we do want to partner with. And the idea is that we create an easy button for our residents that when they receive a report that says, hey, you really should look at gutter guards, or you really should look at this or that. These are contractors that have been vetted by the MWPA. You can reach out to them and get quotations from them. Or might even get into some novel ideas that perhaps they have financing options that would be like a year of financing without interest. And then they can get that financing, then apply for a grant and get the grant paid. And so this would be a way for them to get work done without actually having to put money forward. And so those who are property rich, money poor can actually start getting some of the work done in that way. So I think there's some awesome opportunities, but we just want to go into it and make sure that we are partnering with the right companies that and they're reputable, that their products meet the standards that we need them, that they would have the pricing that we would want for our residents. Significant discounts is what I mean by that. And they would be able to get the work done quickly and efficiently. We did receive one comment from Director McMillan as far as a slight language change, and that would be requests must be submitted, and here's the addition, in writing well in advance to the management analyst who has the sole discretion to approve or deny requests and to impose those restrictions on, and then the addition, the use of MWPA insignia. And so with that, we're looking for any other suggestions to the language, ideas, and thoughts.
All right, questions? So Julie, go ahead.
So my only concern is this. So if we support an individual contractor, are we bucking up against the public contract code? If we give our like United Lab approval, it's okay, this is MWPA approved to one contractor, then how does that? So above a certain amount, things have to go out to bid. And so that's my concern is like, how do we stay neutral? I mean, I think all the discount ideas are great for us, but I'm not sure about the public contract code.
I have the same concerns. And so when we craft the RFP and RFQ, we'll be working with Megan and council to make sure that we are not violating any of those.
Julie?
So my question that I just thought of while you were presenting was, it's going to be a huge windfall to these companies to have the endorsement of the MWPA, right? That's just like winning the lottery. Do they have to pay? Should they be asked to reimburse for the use of this logo because of the additional credibility that they're going to receive from it?
Yeah, right now that this policy is quite broad. It just says that it's for co-sponsorship. So it doesn't actually address that type of arrangement in detail. And I think this was meant for sort of as a starting point, I think, for us, with broader language that allows for internal approval of co-sponsorship on some, the type of projects that we're doing, rather than, it doesn't get into the nitty gritty of the kind of scenario that we're talking about with the discounts. And I would definitely want to dive in a bit deeper before allowing for that, because we also don't want it to be a gift of public funds. There are other issues that come into place. We're talking about a for-profit, like a profit benefit there. So yeah.
This is
For Marin Master Gardeners, we cannot recommend one vendor over another because it would jeopardize our 501c3 status. So there's probably something similar. Thank you.
Rachel?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, as much as I like the idea to make it easier for the residents to know who are good provider, vendors for the work that needs to get done, I think there are some concerns around this. And I'm hoping as we go through the process, we identify that if one of the vendors, for whatever reason, goes south, in terms of either bad publicity or we have a way of quickly getting out of it. So they're not using MWPA logo. That would be one concern. We sort of faced a lot of this when the schools were looking at, getting approached by businesses and wanting to be associated with the schools. And it became very difficult because of the public funds issue. I'm a bit concerned that from an equity perspective, those companies that are able to go through the process of this are those that have the most resources available to do it, and other ones will not. So I think we need to make it, if it's going to be something that we're allowing everyone to do, we need to make sure that it's easily available to other providers as well.
And just as right now, all we're talking about is the use of our logo and insignia to set us up for when we go through the RFP, RFQ process. And of course, that RFQ will be coming to the full board. We'll follow our standard process that we bring it to the executive, the detailed review of the RFQ, and then we'll bring it to the board for approval. So that's where we can really dig into these discussions.
Okay, Bruce, go ahead.
It's an interesting question, and just one comment is the language by itself it says use by organizations and individuals. There's nothing about businesses, so we might want to look at the wording. Secondly, I guess I'm really concerned that, and you mentioned it, Mark, in your report, what standard are we going to use to make the determination as to who we should partner with or not? Are there ISO standards? Is there a public resource code that defines what meets certain manufacturing and quality and performance standards? I think we need to dig a little bit deeper and be more clear on what screens we'll put up and what tests we would require of a proposed activity. For example, I have gutter guards that were put on years ago. They're plastic. Didn't know what I was doing, but indeed, I think that 4291, is that the code for
Public Resource Code 4291
that the state passes every few years, and then and agencies actually adopt? There are indeed standards that meet requirements to get a permit issued for something. So I think we need to dig a little bit deeper than just, and
that will be in the RFP.
Yeah, I just think I'd like to see a little bit more detail as far as what standards we're going to use and process, I
Right.
think.
And that'll all be built into the RFP and RFQ when we bring it forward to you.
Oh, okay, thanks. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce. Couple comments I just would make. I think it's important that the products are quality tested. We don't want to be putting our logo on something that doesn't work well. And just remembering that you need to include maintenance in that. How do they get maintained? Because I've seen gutter guards that are impossible to get off. And things do filter through and fill gutters through the gutter guards. So I think that's important. And then probably some sort of an annual renewal for the use of the logo so that we have an option to pull it away should they not be performing very well. So just my suggestion.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Just a question. So what legal liability do we have when there's a logo on somebody else's product?
So this policy definitely does not go down that road of looking at the private component to, co-sponsorship, because we'll have to write that into any agreement that we would have with whoever we're partnering with. It very much puts it on them and not on us. So sort of lessening it as much as we can. Exactly.
One more question on that. Is it possible to have sort of a different logo that says in partnership or authorized by or approved by? So it somehow differentiates from our regular logo, but it's only provided to those that are approved?
Yeah, we'll explore that for sure.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. Any other questions from executive committee? Comments? All right, we'll go to public comment then on this, Martina.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on discussion item number 7B, the use of the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority logo, please raise your hand in the reactions. And for those joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And sir, there are no hands for comment.
Thank you. I'm going to bring you back to committee for any further discussion or feedback. You may have heard it plenty already, I think. So thank you for taking good notes, Megan. All right, we're going to move to the next item then, which is committee reports. Citizens Oversight Committee is the only report today. Mark, do you want to start this, or do we have a member in the audience?
We should have one of the COC members available to discuss COC actions with the exec committee, but can let you know that made a lot of progress in their annual report. They've approved the 3 components of it. Staff is compiling that and we'll be bringing it back to an ad hoc subcommittee that they have in order to put it in one voice. When you have 3 individual authors, sometimes it has a slightly different voice. So we're working to make it one voice, and then we'll get it over to the graphics person. And then we do have Rebecca Suggs on board.
Hi, Rebecca. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. First of all, and even though I'm a member of the COC hasn't had a chance to take a look at this and review what I'm going to be saying. So I'll be speaking for myself. And it's not exactly a report. I do want to comment on the discussion that you all just had, which was really good. Asking questions that the COC would have wanted to ask on all of those items. I did want to comment about what you've learned through the process of both of those 2 discussion items. It seemed like there was a lot of good questioning going on that might have also been leading to what are you learning about next time this happens, or if we're going to be sharing the logo, or if we're going to be having members leaving or merging. All of that sounded like really good learning territory. If you're learning new things about how to do this, how is that being captured other than just in the minutes of a meeting? That future discussions or future, if you're going to be doing this again, how will people know what you've learned about how to get it done? Will you be modifying policies and procedures? I noted in the staff report on the Mill Valley merging issue that staff said you might want to look at the JPA agreement and modifying that, more complicated than modifying policies or procedures. But if you're going to be doing that, how will you know and how will you capture how to get this done next time? What things to look for next time? Is that a staff procedure that gets modified, or is that a executive committee procedure that gets modified? All of that is of interest to me, and it's also in the neighborhood of what the COC looks at and says, is this all looking like you're being really efficient and getting stuff done really proficiently as well? A number of questions came up in my mind that you all hit on about how to get it done. So I think your questions are leading you to process and procedure. And that's what I'm interested in watching for the future. And if you've got comments about what you've all learned now, that would be great. But for the future, how will you capture all of that? That was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Any questions from the committee to Rebecca? Okay, now I'm going to bring you back to Mark if you want to make some initial comments about her question.
No, they're all thought-provoking questions, and definitely, I think, in line with the conversation and discussion that we've had. So I think as we move forward, we'll be able to address most of those questions and or comments as based on the conversation that we've already had.
Yeah. Good. Which reminds me.
Sorry, I just have one question. Sorry.
Oh,
To the COC on this calendar, since we just closed last year, where is the COC starting up in terms of we're wrapping up the prior year? I'm sort of, can we just review the calendar again, where we're at in terms of reports?
Mark, do you want to take that? I'm not sure Rebecca's still on our, there she is. Okay. It's probably more appropriate for Mark to answer that since you're not representing the COC. Unless you want to put a different hat on.
I could put a hat on that says, you know, here's the calendar and here's where we are. I think that would be fine with the COC.
Yep.
But Mark, if you have a comment to make about that too, that would be fine.
Just the calendar is right now, and Rebecca can say if I'm right or wrong. Right now, like I said, staff has compiled that. We will be getting it to the annual report for the 21-22 fiscal year. A lot of work has gone into it. We're putting it into that single voice. We will get it to the graphics designer, and it would be at the August COC meeting that they would be looking for final confirmation. Does that jive with your recollection, Rebecca?
It does.
So that's 21, 22, and then 22, 23.
They've already we had a fantastic retreat here in the middle of July that helped march out and map out the exact content of what they are looking for in the 22-23 work plan. And they've already have some ad hoc subcommittees working towards that product.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Julie?
So just to finish that, do you think that the final report, the COC report for 21-22 will be on the September board agenda?
September, October.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other questions or comments? All right, we're going to go to the public then on this item. Any members of the public wish to comment on the Citizens Oversight Committee report?
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the Citizens Oversight Committee report, please raise your hand in the reactions. And for those joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And sir, there are no comments.
Thank you. Bringing it back to the committee for the discussion. No action is required. All right. Thank you all. Going to move to item 9 and the Board of Directors agenda preview or review.
Yeah, and just wanted to comment on a couple of additions that we will have on that agenda. Number one, very early, we will have an introduction of Christine Murray. She will be our new board member from Muir Beach, replacing Paul Jeske, who will be moving out of the Muir Beach Community Service District. Then the first action item will be the president and vice president elections. And then one of the other items that we'll be adding is our master services agreement that we will be pushing out for vegetation management work. And in short, and we prefaced this in June, and we actually had a policy to support this that was in the June board meeting. That is to create an approved contractor list for our veg management projects, so that the member agencies won't have to go through contracting and procurement on their own. We'll be able to use our procurement processes and then put the vendors or the contractors on project, invoice us directly, rather than the process that's been going on is they invoice Novato Fire. Then Novato Fire creates an invoice and forwards those same exact invoices as proof of the invoice. So we want to eliminate that step there, and Megan can add any additional language that we need for that.
Yeah, so in addition to the master services, well, it would be an RFQ or request for qualifications of contractors, so that we could then seek out contractors who do all types of vegetation management work, and then enter into master services agreements with a number of them. So we would have, say, for this is just an example, but say 2 tree removal companies under a master services agreement, and then 3 goat grazers under one, so we would have these agreements in place that would then allow us to farm out the contractors who are appropriate for a given project or projects based on task orders following entering into these master services agreements. So this is sort of the first step of that, which would be releasing an RFQ that you would be approving, or the board will be approving, that would then allow us to negotiate master services agreements with each of these contractors. And we have built into the RFQ, the draft that we're working on currently is, just the language that will allow us to focus on equity when we're choosing the contractors that would potentially be under those agreements, so that we'll have a variety of vendors that could provide those services, and we can kind of pick and choose. And the only comment I would also add to Mark's is that this would only be for core projects at this stage, because even that will be a lot to manage.
Great. So we're gonna questions. Go ahead, Catherine.
Okay, here again, liability. In the past, if the individual agencies were the ones that contracted, was it didn't they were the project owners, right? And then if we shift to us, then we become the project owners. So what is your sense of liability there?
Right. I'm not sure that it will be that different, really, because all of our contracts include indemnity language that requires the contractors to indemnify us for quite a bit, and they have to carry workers' comp, and the insurance requirements, I think, are pretty uniform, whether they're under the local agencies or under our umbrella. So, and I have a feeling that if a local agency gets sued for a project that MWPA is funding, we'll probably get sued too. So I think we're going to be on the hook either way, and we're writing those agreements to give us the best coverage we can get, but obviously not foolproof on, and we can't guarantee that we won't get sued, but we're trying to build everything in that will give us some cover, as much cover as we can get.
Other questions about anything on the agenda, including this item?
I have some additional topics to bring up with
Okay.
you, unless you want to
Bruce,
touch
you
on
want to
it.
ask a question on this one?
Not know what's on the agenda, Mark. I'm just really interested in the status of the ingress egress work, and then the strategic planning work that's being done by our subcommittee. Will we be receiving an update here eventually? Or when do you envision that?
So we brought forward the measures of success for goals 1, 3, and 5 at the June meeting.
Yeah.
So we haven't created the ad hoc subcommittee for goals 2 and 4 yet. That'll be
Okay.
moving forward. The evacuation, ingress, egress risk assessment. We have received the current draft report. We've gone through 2 of our reviews. The next step is to go to the technical advisory team,
Okay.
and then we'll be bringing it to the board.
Okay. Perhaps let's see, I guess what I was recall is that there was some peer review ongoing related to the Willow Labs work and looking for confirmation from, subject matter experts on some of the algorithms that we're using to generate measures of success, if you will, just for lack of a better term.
That peer review won't be completed until September, October.
Okay, that's what I was wondering is
All right.
the status? Okay, and we'll just look to hear from you when it's time to report out.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then the other items that'll be on the agenda that I wanted to discuss is you'll see a grant pro forma that's in consent. It's for a BRIC grant that we're putting in for through the federal government and potentially a NOAA grant that we're going to partner with the county of Marin. This is the NOAA grant's new and emerging. It will center around sea level rise and the impact on evacuation routes due to sea level rise. You also see a compensation policy amendment and a recommendation for a cost of living adjustment for our employees. We kind of got separated. The policies between the employees and the executive officer kind of diverged a little bit. So we're just bringing the language to be so that they're the same language. You'll get to see my evaluation and any potential compensations changes for that. We also have a contract with the Conservation Corps North Bay for the Greater Nevada Shaded Fuel Break in order to utilize the grant they received for their work on the Greater Nevada Shaded Fuel Break from the Forestry Corps. And Bruce will be super excited about this. You ready, Bruce? Talking to Danny Franco, the forest health strategy will be published very, very soon. And we're looking at his presentation for September.
I'm really excited.
So
that's a fantastic document.
any other questions related to the agenda review for August? All right, we'll go to public comment on the agenda review.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on item 9A, the Board of Directors and Agenda Review for the August 17th, 2023 Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority Board of Directors meeting, please raise your hand in the reactions. And for those joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And so we do have a comment from Rebecca Suggs. And Rebecca, you should be able to unmute yourself at this time.
Well, apparently not.
No, we can hear you.
Oh, great. I just had a quick question. Are you going to move the Mill Valley issue from consent to discussion for the board?
We are. Yes, Rebecca.
Okay, that was it. Thanks.
Offer opportunity for the board members to ask questions. Yep. Thank you.
And if there are any additional comments for item 9A, please raise your hand in the reactions or press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And so there are no additional comments.
Okay, going to bring it back to the executive committee for any further feedback or comments. No action is required. Julie?
I just want to remind everyone that on August 18th, the day after the board meeting, we're having our event at McNair's Beach to honor President Rodoni. And I think Martina's going to be sending out a RSVP. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Julie. So having nothing left on the agenda, I'm going to move we adjourn to August 17th. So thank you all for attending today. Thanks to the audience, thank you, staff, and thank you,
Rachel.
Martina.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye now.